Hello, dear folks and friends. Today I'm going to talk about two key beliefs that motivate me to be an incredible mother. Now, as I was trying to articulate and form what I wanted to talk about in this episode, I called it all these different titles. Like I was going to talk about, why do I find having children important, or like the value of motherhood? And I was like, it's not really highlighting what what I really want to talk about, what I really want to get across, like what message I want to get across. And so I think this was really, yeah, just like bare bones, the actual thing that and message that I want to get across, which is the two biggest beliefs that I have, that I remind myself, that motivate me to work hard, to be an awesome mom, and to continue to affirm what I'm doing in my vocation and seeing it as valuable and good. And so, yeah, I'm going to jump right in and get into that. So, first of all, there's so many beautiful parts of motherhood, and I'm kind of going to get a lot more practical, I think. There's, of course, the spiritual, beauty of motherhood, about like the feminine genius and how God created woman and all of those beautiful things. Like, those are all good things that I believe and hold to be true. However, I kind of want to tackle this notion from a slightly different angle, which is this. For a married woman having children, being an incredible mother is how you win at life. Like, that's kind of more so the angle is just kind of this, like, on a natural level, like success and winning, like being a champion, so to speak, in life. I think for a married woman, having kids, raising children, educating them, forming them well, that and like suffering the hard things and like having a grit and a resilience in the day to day ordinary things and doing them superbly well, I really believe that that's how you win at life, not some other kind of venture, not some sort of endeavor, not some sort of like side hustle that, you pour yourself into and you feel more alive in. I really do believe for married women, this is the place where you should feel the most alive, where you should grow to feel the most alive. So just to clarify, I'm not speaking to women who struggle with infertility or, as if they don't have any purpose. Because of course they do. That's a unique circumstance. I'm just talking about being a mom in general, like moms in general. And so that's kind of it. So here's the outline that I'm going to be following for this episode, which is first, I'm going to talk about the two things that make me just on fire about being a mom. And honestly, I feel like really this episode is for me because honestly, mama is tired lately. I am definitely feeling the pregnancy. I'm tired. I'm just kind of feel stretched and worn out. And I love my children. They are just all very little and are learning how to function as people. There's a lot of things that come along with that, and it's a lot of work to pour into them and to be patient. And so I have been really feeling this. Okay, I just need, I need a slap in the face. I need, to kind of pump myself up, especially with the coming week ahead, ground myself, kind of just dial in, okay, my vision, goals, purpose, all of that. And I think this episode is really for me to remind myself of that, and it'll convict myself to do the thing, especially if I'm saying it, and then if I also something to go back to and listen to for myself. Anyways, okay, so the outline is I'm going to talk about, yeah, what kind of makes me on fire about being a mom, because the notion of having a lot of kids and responsibility, like yes, it's a lot. It doesn't particularly like scare me in regards to the responsibilities, the mental and emotional weight it puts on me. Because yes, the day in and day out is really hard, but even though I go through these pockets and seasons of, yeah, I'm worn out. Yes, I feel stretched. Yes, I'm tired, kind of all the normal things that moms experience. I'm super motivated. I am very motivated. I feel very zealous about this. And it's not something, at least right now, and I don't intend to kind of give up on. And how I just, yeah, I don't want to do anything else. So that's the first part. And then I'm going to share some personal thoughts as to why I think women struggle in motherhood in general with overwhelm, resentment, kind of going through the motions, things like that. So let's jump into number one. So these are the two things. The number one thing is I believe with all my heart that I am building a legacy. this is what I'm doing day in, day out, having children, raising my family with my husband. Like that's me stamping my mark here in this earthly life. And my motherhood, the investment, the energy, everything, all of myself that I pour out into my family is a generational investment. Because all of these little day after day little inputs are going into creating something amazing that is so subtle and impactful and creates ripple effects that I don't think I might not even see the fruit of, and I don't even realize, but I 100% believe that that is what is happening in what I'm doing on a daily basis. And so it bears this sort of eternal weight. And I think it's especially when you're doing something mundane and ordinary every single day, it's sometimes hard to see how doing something well will have a generational impact. But that's, I think, the point. Like it's something that you just keep putting in day after day after day after day, and you won't see the fruit of it until it's all of a sudden just there. Like, for example, like when your kids are older or they start having kids or your grandchildren or how your grandchildren raise their children. It's like maybe like that maybe seems so far removed to you until you think like almost even that's not even a worthy, I don't know, a worthy notion, or it's just, oh, that's so far down the line. Like, how could what you do impact then? But that, what we're building, like as mothers, informing our children, like this is the foundation of society and culture. And we definitely see what happens over time with generational just like decay and sin by just looking at our modern day culture and looking at the worldview and the perspectives and the disposition people have to the church, to children, to marriage, to purity, to modesty, like every single aspect of life. Like that comes from a formation that was started from the small domestic church, that the household. And so I 100% believe that whatever I'm doing every single day, it truly matters. Giving my all every single day matters because it compiles over time. Some people have the great blessing of having a family name that they're kind of attached to, like, oh, like you're a Smith, or your family founded the library in the community, or your family has been in in this area for many generations. You have aunts and uncles and cousins that are all around. You find certain pockets of that in different places. I think that's a really beautiful gift. And I think sometimes I think it could be a temptation. I mean, it definitely was a temptation for me to think like, oh, I mean, I'm not really attached to like a big family name. And so to some degree, like my family is kind of insignificant, so to speak. Like there's not waves of impact that it's creating around them. People don't know who we are. We don't have a name that's kind of stamped in the community or people know very well. And for me, I personally didn't have that in general. Like, I come from immigrant parents with one other sibling and with one other cousin in this country. And I think it could be really easy to just, yeah, in some way feel like you're kind of a nobody. And I could look at myself and feel like I'm at disadvantage at this whole family thing, um, which, to some degree, feel like I was, in the sense that I didn't know much about family life. I didn't have, yeah, like that kind of family culture. There's a lot of things that in marriage I have learned and had to seek out and ask for help and seek counsel for, because I just not came into all of this not really knowing anything, I suppose, or not knowing a lot. And so that could be, yeah, something that I could see. I could totally see that being a limiting belief to myself, to be like, well, I wasn't equipped with these things. I don't know how to be a great mom. Therefore, I can't be as good of a mom. Oh, I've never really taken care of children. So I don't even know if I'm going to be able or capable to have a lot of kids. But I really believe that the horizon is sort of endless, in the sense of you can create, you can cultivate, you can start, in a sense, that family legacy that you've maybe never had before, And so here I am right now in my life with 4 sons and our first daughter on the way, and I pray for God to multiply this family. I want more kids, and not just because I'm trying to create a legacy and you need not that you necessarily need a ton of children to have that, obviously, it definitely helps with the multiplication of, of the family name, so to speak. But yeah, it is so it's not for some this sort of like superficial desire for like glory or fame or something like that. And I'm not saying a legacy is purely manifested in the number of children. Like you can sow greatness for generations and you can definitely sow seeds of bitterness and woundedness for many generations as well. Don't get me wrong. But naturally, that is how society and culture is multiplied, how culture shifts, and how you make a generational impact. That's how great nations are born and bred. That like, you need to populate, you need to have more children. And so I'm not going to let what I have lacked make me believe that that's not something that can't be attained. And I don't just value it for, its kind of natural sake in terms of what it brings to man and his name being spread or anything like that, or just like the feeling of there being, in a sense, more of you, your family being larger, your family kind of growing, like, that's a beautiful thing in and of itself, but I do really think that God values generational investment. Like, all throughout the Old Testament, we see the valuing of lineage, descendants, nations. Those were considered great blessings, and all throughout the Old Testament, when God makes promises with Abraham, Moses, Israel, all these different Old Testament figures, he promises to them, like, descendants that number as the stars, great nations, a growing people. That was very valuable to it's very valuable, I believe, to God. It's very valuable to those people. And in growing a people, as in your little hub, your little family, is a grand mission and it's a big deal. And I think in our society, we've really lost that. Like, we don't even want it, we've pulled away from the notion of having many descendants. We would rather have less descendants if we were to be honest sometimes, because more and more children are seen as a burden, a time sucker, demanding work, and they are demanding. They are a ton of work. They require a tremendous amount of investment, and attentiveness and energy, like your whole being, especially for a woman. Babies require your entire being, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so, yeah, I definitely understand and see why there is kind of this hesitancy, this pullback, with having a lot of children in general. And so I, talk about NFP and having grave reason, all that kind of stuff, more in a, yeah, I guess like more in depth and just like with more thoughts to it. But I'm not going to get into that here. I'm just gonna kind of, yeah, like say how I feel about the whole notion, my perspective on the whole notion, just briefly here. But I think amongst faithful Catholics, the I think we can accept and we can accept and submit to so many truths of our faith. The institution of the Eucharist, anti-contraception, anti-abortion, like all these kinds of big topic things that as a Catholic you ought to believe, they're good to believe, you should believe them. But I think there's so much kind of like variety or take or perspective when it comes to the rearing and bearing of children because of all the truths of our faith that we're kind of demanded to believe, especially when it comes to conceiving children and needing to have grave reason. In comparison to all those other truths that we ought to obey and to follow, none of those, or yeah, sure, I'm gonna go with none of those, or at least definitely majority of those, don't demand a selflessness from the individual in the same way being open to life does. It particularly demands on an individual that truth, that openness, something that you have to believe within your faith. That differs from all the rest because of how much it personally demands on your life? I think I've heard this question before, and I think at the bare bones, like, this is people want to know, or, like, this is what they're looking for the answer for this, and I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'll give you my honest opinion, I guess, about it, which is, sometimes people will ask, or one might ask, "Does the church say you need to have as many children as humanly possible? Like, do you need to just be pumping out children one after the other after the other?" I will say this, no, she doesn't l like, the church doesn't literally say you have to pump out children as much as humanly possible and be like a bunny rabbit. But the implication is this: you are to be fruitful, very fruitful, because you need grave reason to avoid having children. And therefore, you would think that a healthy woman of childbearing years within marriage the natural conclusion to that notion is that she is going to have, or she should have, many children. I think that's true. And I think that's something, and obviously people want to get into all the intricacies of all of that, but I would say that Catholic married women in childbearing years who don't have any difficulties or health complications in terms of fertility are called to have many children. Yes, I do believe that's true. And you can argue, like that God calls us to other forms of fruitfulness besides having children. But again, honestly, for a woman who is not experiencing struggles within her fertility, your primary call is to bear the fruit of children. And I think that's a tough break. Like, I feel even for myself, like, I definitely even feel for myself, where I believe that to be true. That doesn't mean I don't think that's tough. Where, especially now as I'm getting into kind of like homeschooling our kids, I'm like, okay, wow. So I am, as I am bearing children and providing for my children in terms of like their emotional and physical needs and cooking and cleaning, I also now am educating them while being pregnant with another child. Wow, like that's a lot, like there's a lot going on. There's a lot that's being demanded of you. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's a very intentional, because it's a vocation for a reason. But I want to even read from, the Catechism, where it says in paragraph 1652, by its very nature, the institution of marriage and married love is ordered to the procreation and education of the offspring, and it is in them that it finds crowning glory. I think that's really key, that's where it's found. And then it goes on to say that children are the supreme gift of marriage and contribute greatly to the good of the parents themselves. God himself says, be fruitful and multiply. Hence, true married love and the whole structure of family life which results from it, without diminishment of the other ends of marriage, are directed to disposing the spouses to cooperate valiantly with the love of the Creator and Savior, who through them will increase and enrich his family from day to day. I just think that's kind of a lost. I think that's just kind of lost. Like of the value of having children and raising them is your crowning glory. I think that is just so beautiful and true. I think of even when you kind of look at a priest and look at his vocation, I think we have a sense. I think like the lady definitely seem, just by the way we talk, they have a sense of what a good priest is, a man who is being faithful to his vocation. One would say about a good priest, that he celebrates the mass reverently. He offers the sacraments reverently, regularly. He, is there for his flock. He's attentive to the needs of his people. He's putting on stuff like feeding, like giving good, like feeding the church, feeding the people. Like we have a sense of what is a good priest. And we would say like that's him being faithful to his vocation, that he is living out his vocation well. However, when we flip it, when we talk about the lady, the call to marriage is also a vocation alongside religious vocation. Like they are both vocations, and I think they share a lot of similarities. I think as a married person, your life should reflect a religious like, religious life more than it should reflect, I don't know, your neighbor Jill or something like that, like, down the road. But I think that what I'm trying to get a point the point that I'm getting across is that, we say of a priest that he is being a good priest because of how much he's sort of, like, laying down his life for his people. And I think when we flip it and we talk about, husbands and wives, we don't wanna attach, like, what's objectively good, like, what's an objectively good thing for a husband and wife to be doing, or a woman to be, and I'm specifically talking about a mom because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a mom. Um, but it's like, we don't wanna say what's objectively a good mom because I think I mean, I do think there obviously is, like, a lot of variance in terms of just, different personalities and things like that, but I do think that there is something to say about a woman living out her vocation as a mother well, that, like, just doing it isn't like, the certain attitudes that you take on, the emphasis that you put on your life, the priorities that you order, like, I think there is objectivity of what is good and what is not good for your family, for your role as a mother. So, for example, I do think that there is an issue if a woman would rather pursue other ventures outside her home, especially when she has young children, than to take up her role and responsibility to care and form her children, especially if, yeah, the children are really young. And the reality is, if you are being open to life and are a fertile woman in childbearing years, you will have young children in your home for at least, like, a couple decades in a sense, right? Like, if you start having children on average around the age of 25 and you're not hitting menopause until around your 40s and you're being open to life, like, you potentially, not saying um it's a given, but, like, with that kind of scenario, you would it would almost, like, naturally follow that you would probably have young children in your home for quite a long time. And I'm not talking about the unique circumstance where somebody maybe has to work, like, financially for their family. Like, I can't determine for an individual what is, like, I can't make that discernment, or I'm not gonna, stamp that, a woman in general who is contributing financially to her family, because that's a big spectrum of financial contribution, like, financially contributing to one's family. That's a big spectrum of how a woman does that. It's all about, I think it's more so about the time, and it could be not financially related or not, as in it should I think that there is still an issue whether the venture is bringing in money or not. If she's pursuing ventures beyond her home and leaving her primary role to like, raise and bear children and educate them, and not saying you have to homeschool, but, like, that you're forming your children, you're there especially for the younger years of their life, and you're going out and you're, kind of delegating or giving that role or responsibility to somebody else that isn't the mom. And not to say that once your kids are older, you all automatically just stop being needed, or you don't need to be present, or you don't need to try, you don't need to be intentional anymore. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that just naturally, though, I think there is more wiggle room. It's more of a conversation. I think there's more, like, flexibility for a woman to be doing ventures or pursuing things outside of her home. Again, doesn't matter if they're financial or not, but, like, in a sense, like, doing other things. She could be volunteering at a retirement home. I don't know, something like that. But doing other things like that, there's a bit more wiggle room there. Yeah, just naturally when your children are a bit older. But again, if you are open to life and you are of childbearing years, like, there should be a tension and a friction and a hesitancy of leaving your young children to pursue, like, other things, that take you outside of your home and kind of replace the primary duty that you have to your kids, to raise them, to care for them. Um, yeah, I think that's definitely something to be extremely aware of and talk about, and I think if there is a tension there, I think there's a natural tension there, and I think it's good to be there, and it should be there because it's a conflicting thing. they are conflicting desires, like a woman wanting to do other things other than child rearing and childbearing, and then the fact that she has like her reality is that those things exist for her. And so if she is pursuing something else, well, she naturally is split within herself. That is true. And I think I think it's a hard balance to find. I don't think most people can find it, honestly, that well. I think we make a lot of excuses for different things. But anyways, definitely a good conversation. I'm not saying I have like the answer for it, and I'm not saying that anybody's particular situation or anybody who I personally know is doing it wrong or whatever. I mean, that's like a discernment that has to happen between our Lord, them, and their spouse. But I do think it's more widely accepted, and we try to make that work more than we should when we don't have to. If we don't have to, for example, like if it's not a financial reason, it's purely an interest and a desire, and it's an interest. It's something that you enjoy. It's a dream that maybe you've had for a long time, but you're also simultaneously having kids. I do think we make a lot of exceptions for people to kind of like do it all, and I don't think you can do both of those very well. One of those things are going to most likely, like suffer a bit or not get the attention it needs. I think that's naturally going to happen. And I'm using the example of a woman who is maybe going out of her home to pursue other ventures as an example, but it's not really even about going out. It has all to do with just how much time and attention and energy is she putting to something else rather than her primary duty of caring for her children, because it doesn't matter if you go out or if you're inside your home. What just matters is the nature of how much you're giving to something else. So yes, I'm saying I made the reference to going out to work, but I also mean women who, do things from home as well. And that can even mean not even, again, nothing that could even mean something that doesn't financially bring in uh, anything into her home. Like it could even be this podcast, for example, like me doing this is like, I'm not bringing in anything financially through this, but if I spend an inordinate amount of time recording different episodes every single day, or, like just like trying to make this into something that, is like a big empire, is like some sort of business, or just like fixating on it more than I should. Like, I think that still falls into the same category. Like, I think we should be able to say, and I think we should say that objectively, a good mother is extremely warm and kind and patient and available. That she is a good mother is a woman who makes the effort to cook well, to provide good food for her family, who keeps house well, who keeps her home in an orderly, organized fashion, whatever, in a sense, like spectrum that is, but just like that there is effort that's put into keeping up house, that she cleans well, like she cleans proficiently, that she cares for her family well and takes care of them well. I think we make a lot of allowances, or it's just, obviously it's sensitive in general, but like we don't want to say a woman, a mother, a good mother should cook well, like for example, because of, I guess, the sensitivity around the subject. But I do think that there are objective qualities, objective things that every mother should do well, should learn if she's not good at it, if she's not proficient at it, that she should make the effort to obtain the skill if she doesn't necessarily have them. Because I guess whether you realize it or not, or whether you like it or not, the moment that you got married and you said yes to the Lord to enter into this vocation, and therefore also said yes to the openness to life and bearing children and having them, that comes along with responsibilities that you should make an effort to be good at, especially if you're not naturally good at those things. It doesn't matter if you don't like them. It doesn't matter if you don't have like a natural proclivity to those things. Maybe you don't really love cooking, or you don't really love cleaning. And that's, in a sense, like you don't have to like it, but I think a good mother should make an effort to learn to do those things well, whether or not she likes them or not. Because it's not about what she likes. It's not about, like, the race that you've entered into is not about, like, you have to run the race whether you like it or not. And so
the skills, the attitudes, the kind of woman, the qualities that you bring into your family and that you're raising your children with, even if in a sense you don't like feel like being that woman, your family depends on you to be that sort of woman in a lot of ways. You play an extremely key role in your home, and I don't think it's about personal preference. I think it's about being faithful and obedient to the call that God has for you and for your life, and putting aside, in a sense, your selfishness, your personal preferences, maybe your dreams, your aspirations and goals, and becoming the kind of woman that He's called you to be as a mom.
Oh yeah, and I think this segues well into the second belief that makes me really zealous about being an incredible mom, which is I really believe that being an awesome mom is the way I will become a saint and a high caliber woman. I'm going to clarify it's important to be a good wife, and that relationship comes first. But the reality is that children demand on you, your motherhood demands on you as a woman personally in a different way your husband does. Because your husband is a grown, rational man, and you're forming these little people to be rational, high functioning human beings. And so your children are very vulnerable and very dependent people. And so I guess how it's related to the previous point is like, I actually just don't really, for me personally, this is my opinion, is like, I really just don't see any other sort of like job or work that doesn't demand radical transformation of me as a woman. Like in the stage of the game of life that we're in, I think that, if you want to get under this and kind of like rise above and not just survive this stage of littles, but actually thrive and kind of like come out a champion, so to speak, like on top. I think that just genuinely like having that intention, wanting that transformation to happen to you within your motherhood, it naturally provides all of those things for you if that's what you want. Because for me, like I feel stretched and challenged on every level of my being personally. And maybe that's because of my lack of experience in the past. And so, or before having kids and before being married, like not really, yeah, like not really having any exposure to what family life is like having little children, having all of this stuff. And so maybe, yeah, I could. I think that that's actually very plausible that I struggle more than maybe a woman who has had that in her past. And so much of me, every part of me feels like it just has to change. It has to just constantly change on a physical level, on emotional level, on a mental level. But I'm not gonna lie, like, yes, even though that's hard for me and, like, it's something I kind of, like, I'm always, like, battling against, like, wanting to do my own will, lamenting maybe, like, parts of my life that I had more of a break and things like that versus now. Like, even though those things, like, kind of like, I still feel those things, simultaneously, though, I feel like on fire to like overcome them and to rise above them. I hear all the sentiments, like I hear the sentiment often from older moms kind of telling me that, oh, like this season of life of littles was just like kind of a blur to them because it was, and like they just like they couldn't wait until it was over, so to speak. And it's like for me, I'm thinking when I hear that, I think I don't want that to be me. I want to be going through my day after day, like eyes wide open. I don't want it to be a blur. I want to appreciate every single moment that the Lord has given me, utilize this season well. And if this, in a sense, is, if they're right, and if this is, in a sense, the hardest, quote unquote, part of my life, the season of littles, where all my children are under the age of whatever age they maybe are referring to, if this is hard, and I can rise above it and come out on top and grow to be a high caliber, like awesome woman, then that just makes me excited for when my kids are older and are getting older. And like in my head, it's like, well, that if I can do well here, the in a sense the horizons are endless as my children are getting older. And so that actually just motivates me. That motivates me even further to like if there's things in my life that are out of place or I'm not good at, or I'm not skilled at, like, I wanna do all of those things well. I want to figure it out. I'm going to learn about it. If I don't know, I want to be the kind of mom, I want to be the kind of woman that my children come to me like for things, or they know me as being these things. So for example, like my mom, like almost like I want my kid to be the kid that says like my mom makes the best food, or my mom makes the best cookies, or something like that. Or yeah, my mom worked out. Like yeah, my mom was like fit. She was a fit woman. I don't feel very fit right now, honestly, in my where I am where I am in my pregnancy thus far, but mommy tries to work out. It's trial and error. But I mean, like those are the things I want my kids to look at who I am as a woman. Well, I guess I'm thinking in reference to my boys, to be like I don't know if they'd actually say this, but this would be awesome if they would say this. Is like I want to marry a woman that was just like my mom, because my mom was freaking awesome. Like that's what I want. I want my kids to have that perception of me. I want them to have that perception of myself. And I'm not talking about like some prideful kind of like, you know, yeah, like some prideful, oh, like, oh, I'm the best, like, oh, kind of like have an arrogance about it. But like I want to pursue greatness that the Lord is calling me to be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. Everybody's going to throw their caveats in there, but whatever. I'm talking about the notion of just excellence, being excellent for our Lord, doing the vocation he has called me to do excellently. Like you can see motherhood for sure as this sort of drudgery and obligation and burden that your life has now changed, and you don't get the time to do the things that you want to do anymore. You don't have the same schedule. You don't get the same amount of sleep that you used to get. You aren't able to focus or do as many things that you want to do. Like you can all fixate on, like, in a sense, like all the kind of cons, so to speak, of that comes along with motherhood. Or you can see those cons as exactly the precise way that you are going to achieve that crowning glory that God has called you to. And that's how I want to see my vocation. That's how I want to see, all these sort of all the sort of selfishness that comes up with me in a day because of my kids, because I want to be doing something else, because I'm in a sense like just tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired of doing all the things. But to utilize all of those moments as exact and see all of those moments as exactly what God wants from me, because that is exactly how he's going to make me into the woman I'm meant to be. Because yes, I do, like, I guess of course I do, like, kind of lament my old life, so to speak, when before I was married, like, times before I was married when, I was kind of just like had the freedom, had the schedule, could go and do kind of whatever I wanted when I wanted. And then similar in marriage, like you're a bit more tied down, but but it's actually more fun because now you get to do stuff with your spouse and you get to have no schedule with your spouse. And so, yeah, of course, like there are parts of me that kind of like lament my old life, but it's not because I lamented because I was necessarily that made me a better woman at the time. Maybe I believed it was, but it's easy to believe that you're a better woman when you don't have anything challenging you, or challenging you to be anything other than that. Whereas I see my kids in my marriage, and just, in all the ways that I'm stretched consistently every single day, almost like every moment of my day, challenging me to be a good woman, to be a better woman, to be a selfless woman, to lay down my life for my family. And I just can't really picture any sort of like interest that I have, job, or like, yeah, like job, or, pursuit I could do that would do that. That would hone in on my particular defects and stretch and demand of them even when it feels like I have nothing left to give. And like all parts of me are stretched. I can't picture doing anything that is going to, like, personally, like the most personal, if you wanted the most kind of like personal curated training course to kind of like become a strong, high caliber, successful person, in a sense, like if you wanted a personally tailored uh experience, so to speak, or session, just become a mom. Become a mom, be a mom, have lots of like have kids, and pursue doing that excellently and well. And I think that is exactly where you will find your personally curated boot camp for becoming a better woman. Because doing a good job takes so much work. It is so much energy. It demands so much of you. Like, don't, like, I'm not going to kid myself and believe that I'm just going to get virtuous, well rounded children while being an unvirtuous, not well rounded woman or mother. That's it. Like, kids don't just become virtuous by accident. Like, you just don't get a family dynamic where children love each other, they love their parents by accident. In the same way that you don't just stumble upon sainthood or expect to be a saint if you don't pray, if you don't have a relationship with our Lord, if you don't do the things that make a saint. Like, I don't think you should expect to become one. And I think that's the same thing with motherhood. Like, don't expect to thrive in your motherhood, and don't expect that, like, your children are going to become these, like, yeah, thriving, virtuous individuals if you're not putting your whole heart and soul into giving that, providing that, and being that example for them. And yeah, so to wrap up this point, like, I don't think that any pursuit besides being an excellent mother is any of interest to me. Why? Not just because it's my vocation, not just because it's my primary responsibility, but in terms of, like, just like a purely self-interest level, I don't believe that when you truly embrace the dignity of your role, anything else is even worth the investment, truly. Those are the two main things that really motivate me, those two main beliefs that really motivate me to become and be a incredible mom. And then I'm just gonna close up with just a couple of personal thoughts, which is the following. I think the struggle in motherhood ultimately comes down to a few things, like why there's so much dragging of feet. And I think it just simply comes down to a few things. One, I don't think women really believe how weighty, essential, and worthy being a mother is, and just aren't willing to change. Like, aren't willing to radically change their lives, transform their marriages, transform their environments, their habits, um, relationships, different relationships in their life, do the good things that need to be done uh, in order to thrive in this role. And because that sometimes means getting rid of different things in your life, physical things, and then like non-physical things like relationships or seeking counsel. A big one, not willing to learn, like not willing to suffer things well. There's so much wasted suffering in motherhood. We fill it with complaining, wasting time with other stuff, or we fill it with wishing our lives were a different thing, or just begrudging or resentment. Like I think there, again, motherhood requires and demands, motherhood done well requires radical change to your life. I 100% believe that. At the end of the day, I think the distinguishing factor in general, like you can look at kind of like any natural sort of thing, as in like like an athlete or a successful business. Like the distinguishing factor to like people who are successful or not successful in the things they do, usually, and I would say majority of the time, the distinguishing factor is not skill, is not like past experience. It is the will to work hard. That's what it ultimately comes down to. That the people who are successful and who thrive are willing to like be resilient, kind of put their nose down, suffer the hard things, suffer them well, have a resilience and a grit about them, and have like a tenacity and endurance. It's just like a zeal, a zeal to like push through any sort of obstacle and come out on top at the end of it all. I think that's honestly just usually the most distinguishing factor between people who are winners, champions, or successful, is that very key attitude, is to not give up, and to, if there's an obstacle or something they hit, they find a way to come out on top. So I'll close with this. Yeah, honestly, this was really for me. I needed this. I don't know if you probably could tell in my recording that obviously I'm very passionate about what I'm talking about. And I'm partially passionate because I am passionate, but also I have not been feeling that passion in my own life. And I want to rekindle that. And definitely I feel like that was done here. And I will probably come back to listening to this for myself, to remotivate myself, to hear myself speak about what I truly believe, to kind of refocus my energies and on this. But yeah, I think I'll just close with this kind of sentiment. I totally understand and get that maybe this might sound so ideal, lofty, and maybe even naive. But the truth of the matter is that realistic people don't chase unrealistic goals. And I would rather be an idealist who chooses the mind frame of something that will ultimately serve me and my family best than limit myself to the notion that greatness and success is unlikely to be achieved just because it's difficult. That's all for this week, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. God bless.